everybody. It's Lights, Camera, Jackson. We're back here on Sunday. I was at the Critics' Choice Documentary Awards last Sunday. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But welcome to Sunday, November 17, 2024, this new episode of LCJ Live. We're live. We're here. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. I've got Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson here with me, along with Jerry Seinfeld, Barry B. Benson from B-Movie. We're going to talk about how I met Jerry Seinfeld last Sunday at the Critics' Choice Documentary Awards. A good story is coming. And of course, Red One with The Rock opened in theaters this weekend. I saw it, and I think it's better than most people are saying it is. Not a perfect movie, but better than some of the terrible reviews it's been getting. I will talk about that here coming up on LCJ Live. As always, send in your questions and your comments. If you're watching here on YouTube, thank you. I'm wearing red for Red One. And as always, we start with the box office. Number one, Red One, $34.1 million, an easy win for Amazon MGM Studios. It had no competition this weekend, coming off of Venom, crushing it, even though it's not doing as well as the other Venoms, with three straight number one victories for Venom: The Last Dance, which dropped to second with $7.4 million. It's at $127.6. When it comes to Red One, this $34.1 million is about in line with expectations. It's about even with the $35 million starts this year of If, which ended up making $111 million, and The Wild Robot, which just keeps climbing. Yes, a $35 million start, but another $4.3 million for The Wild Robot this weekend in fifth. It's at $137.8 million. I was at a theater yesterday briefly for something, and walking out was a family of 10. Asked them, which movie did you see? And they saw The Wild Robot for the first time in its 8th weekend. Families of 10 are still going to see The Wild Robot. So DreamWorks and Universal are thrilled. It's now made more than $100 million after its $35 million opening weekend. So when you look at the 34.1 of Red One, yes, it had a budget of somewhere between $200 and $250 million. But Amazon was going to originally send this to streaming, and I'm glad that they gave it a theatrical run because, look, it's $34 million. It could get to $100. It could get a holiday boost closer to Christmas. And I don't think it's a terrible movie. Now, there are several problems with it. The first couple scenes, the Chris Evans character backstory, and then his kind of heist thing he does in the next scene should have erased those, deleted those. They should have been gone from the movie. The film should open with the third scene, which is Santa, played by J.K. Simmons, who I think is great in this, and The Rock as his bodyguard at the mall. That's how the movie should have opened, because it's a good scene. It's different. We have this kind of beefed up J.K. Simmons, Santa Claus, who's an exercise maniac, and so is The Rock. And they're at this mall, and they talk about how people are missing the spirit of Christmas and the holidays these days. Yes, it's about consumerism and getting all these products, but also the attitudes of people in the world and what everyone's going through. And I liked the chemistry between The Rock and JK. They have another conversation scene in the North Pole a couple scenes later. Frankly, we could have had just a movie about the two of them, and that might have been interesting. A lot of people saying, oh, Red One isn't funny. Yes, I agree that Red One's not funny, but I don't actually think it tries to be funny on many occasions. And a more serious / Star Wars vibe Christmas movie we haven't really seen before. And so I was kind of with the tone of this Star Wars-esque Christmas action sci-fi movie. The visuals are okay. The Chris Evans character is very generic. There's a Krampus scene that goes on way too long. This movie definitely needed to be 20 minutes shorter. But it comes around at the end and gets some of its themes and points across. And I think it's not a terrible experience. I have sat through many, many worse movies this year. This has been a bad year for film. And I've sat through many worse films than Red One. Frankly, I think Red One's pretty much a 2.5 out of 4 film. It's not bad. Yes, there's problems in the middle. Yes, that Chris Evans character doesn't work. But I like the intention that it has, the tone that it has. That music is almost straight out of a Star Wars movie. So I was sort of with it. It's not cringy like I thought it might be, or like many other movies I've seen this year. It's not really for kids. There's some violence. I mean, 10-year-olds could probably be okay with it, but not really anyone younger. But it's not terrible. Red One. And Pete Crooks disagrees with me, but you know what? I'm gonna side on the positive side of Red One when it comes to this. Yes, it has issues, but it's not terrible. I have seen far worse movies. My gosh, just one after the other after the other. We've talked about some here. I've seen some other films, these supposed award season contenders that just aren't good. They're boring. They have no structure. The performances are over the top and they just don't work. There's been a lot of those this year. So that's Red One leading the way. Venom in second, the best Christmas pageant ever, bringing in some families. That's in third, 5.4 million. It's up to 20 million for Lionsgate. It gets into Lionsgate's top 5 movies of the year. It's about to pass Unsung Hero to do that. And if it earns more than 35 million, 35.3, it will beat The Strangers Chapter 1 to be the biggest Lionsgate movie of the year. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but it may come close. We will see what happens there. Heretic, number 4 this weekend with 5.2 million. It's at 20.4 for A24, which is having a record year at the box office. Sony Columbia, by the way, speaking of Venom, also their top 5 movies of the year have made more money than last year. A24, same thing. Number 5, as I mentioned, The Wild Robot. Number 6, Smile 2, which added 3 million. It's at 65.7. Number 7 is Conclave, which added 2.9 million. It's at 26.7, and if it gets to 28.3, or no, 28.6, it's going to be one of the top grossing movies the last 5 years for Focus Features. It already is their biggest film so far this year. Nosferatu, coming out for Christmas. Will it make more money than Conclave? We will have to see. Number 8 is a film I just found out through Deadline is in the top 10 this weekend. It's called Hello, Love Again, made 2.4 million. Number 9 is A Real Pain, which expanded nationwide to an okay $2.3 million. Not great. It's in about 1,200 theaters. A film that I don't think is great. It's not as bad as Conclave or Anora or Here or We Live in Time. It's kind of close. Or Venom. Venom is bad, but it's funny bad. But A Real Pain, I don't love. Kieran Culkin, I think, has a few moments, a couple reaction shots that are okay, a little interesting, but the movie is not nearly as profound as it thinks it is. It's not as funny as it thinks it is. It's not as charming as it thinks it is. And a lot of it's very obvious. We go down some very obvious paths with A Real Pain. 2.3 million this weekend. It's at 3 million total for Searchlight. If it gets past 5 million, it passes Kinds of Kindness to be Searchlight's biggest film of the year, ahead of Night Bitch, which I have seen, and A Complete Unknown, which opens Christmas Day, the Bob Dylan film. Scott Stallion saw The Lighthouse in IMAX last week for the first time. I really like The Lighthouse. I remember seeing that. Talk about a movie that makes you laugh and makes you is crazy. That is The Lighthouse. Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe looked like they had such a wild time making The Lighthouse, and you experience that while watching the movie. Yeah, that's a trip for sure. And number 10 this weekend is Anora, which added 1.8 million. It's at 10.5 for Neon. It's climbing up the chart on Neon's all-time list. I think it's about to get into the top 5. It's going to pass 3 Identical Strangers. Then it's got to get 15.8 to beat Immaculate. We'll see if it can do that as award season continues on and see with the nominations and such. We Live in Time added 1.1. It's at 23.9. And Here dropped big down to 865,000. It's at 11.6. Don't have the money for Terrifier 3. Yeah, Robert Eggers films. We'll see how Nosferatu is when it comes out for Christmas. Real Pain is great. One of the year's best, says Pete Crooks. I'm going to disagree with you again on this. We've been disagreeing a lot lately. I have seen a couple movies that opened this week. Number 1 that I can talk about is Flow. Flow is an animated film from Ginsa Balotis, who directed this animated film years ago called Away. And he, excuse me, he basically made the whole movie himself. And this is Flow. It's about a cat and some other animals on quite an adventure. And visually, it's very interesting. And if you're an animal lover, you'll probably really get into it. Flow opens in select theaters Friday. A film called Spellbound, which is the Netflix animated film that debuts this Friday on the streaming service. And it is this adventure fantasy musical from Vicky Jensen, who co-directed Shrek back in 2001. And this is her first film in a long time. And it definitely has a couple surprises in terms of the story. There's a big voice cast in it, including being the Ricardos reunion of Nicole Kidman and Javier Bardem. And there's a lot going on. So I think you just have to be prepared for the fact that it's a big, flashy musical with Alan Menken numbers. And so if you're into that, you're going to enjoy Spellbound, which is on Netflix Friday. I've also seen Out of My Mind, which is on Disney Plus Friday. There are some reviews out. I've been told by Disney I can't talk about it till tomorrow. Review embargoes, I mean, I could spend an hour talking about the state of review embargoes and what I've experienced over the last 20 years when it comes to that. But tomorrow I'll officially be able to share with you my thoughts on that. But I will say this. It is on Disney Plus Friday. It's played at some film festivals. Some people have seen it. And I think it deserves your time. So I will officially be able to say more tomorrow, but Out of My Mind is on Disney Plus Friday. And then two films I have, also Bonhoeffer, I have not seen that. Pastor, Spy, Assassin from Angel Studios opens Wednesday in theaters. We'll see how that does. Have not seen that yet. Along with Gladiator 2 and Wicked. I mean, those are the two big movies coming out next weekend. Which one's going to win? It's probably going to be Wicked. Let me say this. A couple years ago, I thought that you split up this Wicked show into two movies. It's going to get a lot of negative reaction. I still think there are some people who are going to go into Wicked thinking it's the whole show, the whole movie, and are going to be very surprised and maybe upset that it's only part one. Maybe it becomes a social media thing. People walk out and are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it was only part one. So that may happen. What originally was going to happen was they were going to be released in the Christmases. And then more recently, Universal said, no, we're going to make them the Thanksgivings. That changes the dynamics a little bit when it comes to box office predictions. Also, I expected Wicked to be PG-13 because I saw the show about a decade ago. And to me, it gave off a vibe of this is a little more than for kids. But the movie's only PG. So it's going to bring in families. So that's going to help the box office and increase what I initially thought it could do. So Wicked is probably going to do very well next weekend. It is probably going to be number one. But Gladiator 2 could be a very strong number two. This is a sequel to an Oscar-winning Best Picture. We don't get many of those. Ridley Scott returning. This cast, the buzz around Denzel's performance. There's a lot going into Gladiator 2. And I hope it's really good. And I hope it's exciting. And I think it's going to do pretty well over the long stretch. We're talking Thanksgiving to New Year's. And same for Wicked. And same for Moana 2, which opens in a week and a half. You're going to get Thanksgiving all the way to New Year's, maybe even all the way to Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which has Paddington in Peru coming out for families, I think that weekend or the next weekend. But all the way through there, these three are going to do very well. I'm looking forward to Gladiator 2. I watched the original recently to get ready. And as far as Wicked, I will see it at some point. I might be waiting to see it with family. Plus, I mean, Gladiator 2 is 2.5 hours. Wicked is 240. It's tough when you're screening award season movies as well, like I am, and Wicked and Gladiator are awards films as well. It's tough to squeeze everything in, so I may wait a little bit to see Wicked. I liked the show, and the Broadway show to an extent, but didn't love it. So my expectations aren't incredibly high because I'm not a gigantic fan of the show, but we'll see how the film is. I'm hoping for good things for Gladiator 2. A couple interview things, and then I will get to my Jerry Seinfeld story, which I truly believe is the perfect Seinfeld-esque story about meeting Jerry Seinfeld. I'll get to that in a second. David Lowery, I spoke with him about A Ghost Story, Pete's Dragon, and his new animated short, An Almost Christmas Story, which is now on Disney+. That conversation is at lcj.podbean.com, as well as animationscoop.com. Tomorrow, new podcast episode, an Animation Scoop Q&A with Dean Lorey, who is the executive producer and showrunner of Creature Commandos, which premieres December 5th on Max from James Gunn, DC, animated action show. We talk about that and very in-depth when it comes to that and the future of the DC universe. That is coming at you tomorrow. All right, it's time for my Jerry Seinfeld story. Last Sunday, I was at the Critics' Choice Documentary Awards in New York City, had a great time, and Jerry Seinfeld was there, because his wife Jessica produced a film that won one of the awards last Sunday called Daughters. So Jerry is there, and I gotta go up and meet Jerry Seinfeld. I got it. Now, you're probably thinking, LCJ, did you talk about B Movie with Jerry Seinfeld? No, I did not. We talked about something else. But here's what happened. I get like a 5-minute warning ahead of time. Hey, Jerry Seinfeld's gonna be here. What? Wow. So in the meantime, 5 minutes pass, whatever, I get a Tic Tac. And so I got a Tic Tac. I got a white Tic Tac in my mouth. And Jerry Seinfeld comes in. So I'm almost done with the Tic Tac. Now, in retrospect, should I have swallowed the Tic Tac? Probably. But I didn't, because I still had a little bit of it left. I want to have good breath to meet Jerry Seinfeld. So I go up to Jerry, who had just gotten there just a couple minutes prior, and he was kind of taking it all in, just, enjoying the atmosphere, the vibe, people coming up to Jessica to talk about the film. And so I go up to Jerry, I introduce myself, I say, hi, I'm a member of the Critics' Choice Association. Now, when you have a Tic Tac towards the end of your tongue, and you have to say Critics' Choice Association, there's a lot of C's and S's in that sound. And so as I say the word association, and Jerry's smiling, he's looking right at me, we shake hands, and I'm looking right at him. As I say association, the last little bit of that white Tic Tac falls out of my mouth and onto the ground. So about a second goes by, and I know it's happened, and I'm looking at Jerry Seinfeld, and I'm wondering, okay, did he know that the Tic Tac just went out of my mouth? So we both then decide to look down at the ground, and we see the remains of this white Tic Tac on the ground. And then we both look up at each other, and Jerry Seinfeld says to me, did you just lose a tooth? And at that moment I go, in my mind I think, all right, do I say it was a Tic Tac? Do I not say it was a Tic Tac? What am I going to say to Jerry Seinfeld? So in that moment, I choose to not say that it was a Tic Tac. And all I say was, I don't know, I just lost something. But anyway, let me tell you about my mother, who watched the first few episodes of Seinfeld from the very beginning and was with you from the very beginning and told everyone about the show. And he appreciated that. He loved that. We said, thank you. Great to see you. He kept staring right at me, smiling, and then he walked away. So I bet you money that now Jerry Seinfeld, in his act, is going to tell a story about this young guy who came up to him at an award show, and a Tic Tac fell out of his mouth. Now, he didn't know it was a Tic Tac, but it was probably, it was a Tic Tac. He thought it might have been a tooth, and so he'll now go off for 10 minutes during his set and talk about Tic Tacs, and should you have a Tic Tac in your mouth when you're meeting someone? What's the thing to do when you're meeting someone at an award show or having a conversation? What's the deal with Tic Tacs? Should you have them in your mouth? Should you not have them in your mouth when you're meeting someone? Should you swallow it? He'll go off for 10 minutes. So if you see Jerry Seinfeld in concert and he tells a story about a guy who he thought lost a tooth when he was meeting him at an award show, that guy is me. And that is the perfect Seinfeld-esque story about meeting Jerry Seinfeld. That is what happened to me last Sunday night at the Critics' Choice Documentary Awards. So I hope you enjoyed that. That is my experience meeting Jerry Seinfeld. It is a moment I will never forget, and I will never think of Tic Tacs the same way ever again, especially white Tic Tacs. All right, yes. That is today's episode of LCJ Live. Thanks for being here. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you enjoyed the show today. We'll be back next Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern to talk about the box office for Wicked and Gladiator 2, and we'll preview the Moana 2 box office as well. As always, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go to lights-camera-jackson.com. Follow me on X, Instagram, Facebook, here on YouTube, lcj.podbean.com, all the social media platforms. Joey appreciated the story. Thank you for the show, Lights. Thank you, Joey. I appreciate that. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time for LCJ Live. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.